We're now on the top of Chavav Beis, and a person says to Levi, Kav'on Planya, Ploni Kav'ani. What does that mean? And Levi had no clue what this man intended to say. Also, She'il Be Midrash, he came to his Medrash, asking what this word Kav'an or Kav'ani means. And Amrule, they told him Gazlan, that Ploni stole from him. And the word Kavani means he stole. He was a Gaz. How do we know this? With regard to the Nevuah of Malachi, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu rebukes Knesset Yisrael because they refuse to give Trumas of Maaseh, it says Hayikba Odom Elokim, which means will man steal from God? God says the Maaseh of Truma like mine, and you're stealing from me. Amalei Rava, the Barnishler of Ashi. Rava says, if I was there at the time when this individual says Kavan Plan, I don't know what the word Kavach means, but I would have interrogated him and I would say, how did he do it? And what did he do? And why did he do it? Then I would figure out that he's talking about somebody who came stealthily and cheated him and stole from him. But Levi had a different approach. He was afraid to ask those questions because he thought it's better to be silent in this case. Milsa di Surah Ka'amar. That this person is really confessing a very immoral act of Gilead rights. And therefore, Levi is not going to interrogate it. So all the Achronim here quoted in the Masechet in the footnote, they all asked the Kasha, shouldn't Levi have asked questions about this Gilead rights in order to punish this person or in order to make him pay damages? So sometimes, like if a man rapes a woman, he has to pay boshes. So that's a question we don't have an answer to. But in any event, for some reason, Levi did not ask these questions. Lo havi yadi Rabbanan mai seirigin. The Rabbanan did not understand the word seirigin, which is mentioned in the Mishnah Megillah on Daf Yud Zayin. And the Mishnah establishes that if you read the Megillah the seirigin, you're not yotze. You have not fulfilled your obligation. That's called karo b'seirigin. So Shamua li'amsa debei Rebbe. Now all the coming stories here are going to be about the famous Shivcha of Rebbe, of Rabbi Yehuda Nosson. And she was very clever. She listened very carefully to Rebbe's choice of words, and she derived from Rebbe the meaning of many, many words that we wouldn't know what they meant. And the Rabbanan heard from this Amsa, this Shivcha, maidservant of Rebbe, that the Chazinu l'Rabbanan Avi Ayel Piskei Piski. She saw the Talmidim were going into the Beis Medrash groups at a time. This is typical. And Amar Lahu, she said to them, "At Masai Atem Nichnasim Seirigin. Why are you coming one at a time with a hefsek, with an interruption between one group and another? Why don't you go in all together?" But we see from whole words that the word Seirigin means things that happen over the course of time with interruptions in between. It's not flowing and continuous. And therefore, with regard to Kriyas HaMegillah, if he reads different pieces of the Megillah with hefsekos in between, that's the problem that the Mishnah addresses there in Masechet Megillah. What does the word chaludlogos mean? And this is mentioned in a brisa with regard to a zav. A zav is someone who, after he sees his first re'iyah of ziva that comes out of his organ, so it's considered like a balkeri, as the din of a balkeri. Then if he sees a second re'iyah on the same day or the next day, he counts 7 nikir. And if he sees a third re'iyah, then he's chayav a korban. And there's a vegetable called a chalgalulus, and it's mentioned in Masechet Yoma amongst the things that we don't feed a zav during that period of time when we're checking out to see whether he's tamei or not. during the Zion Akiyim, etc., because this Yerek, whatever it is, we don't know what it is, will bring tumah. It stimulates the semen and the so. So now we want to know, what is this vegetable? It's Yom Echad Shamu Liamsid Be Rebbe. They heard the shivcha of Rebbe. The Chaze Islahu Gavra. She saw a person to come Vader Parpachini. He was spreading out a yerek, which is called Parpachina. That's what he was doing. So we know it as Parpachina. But she said, she said to him, Ad Mosayatoma Fazer Chaluglosem Ogecha. So you see that Chagogelchos are, according to the Shivcha of Rebbe, they are the same as Parpachina. So that's how we know what is Chalgalogis, which is mentioned in the Brisa in Ziva. What does the pasuk mean in Mishlei when it says, I'll quote the whole pasuk, the Gemara only quotes part of it, Salsaleha usromemecha techabdecha ki sechabkena. And what does Salsaleha mean? Yom Echad Shamua le'amsa de Rebbe. They overheard the shivcha of Rebbe. Davis Amra, she was talking to a person who Gavra. We don't know who this person is. He was moving around his hair. Amra le'ad Mosai Salsa b'sarecha. Why are you always constantly, curling your hair? And what we call mishmush. Mishmush means, when you like knead something with your hair. So now we can understand the pasuk. Salsalah, someone who is looking into the Torah and he's very curious about the Torah. So he, moves it around. He's looking, he's turning it inside out, and he's trying to reveal the secrets of the Torah. He hugs the Torah and he's clinging to the Torah, and that's how he's going to be zocher tromamecha v'tigrom l'chakam. Laviyadi rabbanamai v'tato seye v'matato hashmad. A pasuk in Yeshaya, which is a nevuah about the destruction of Babylon, as an empire came to an end, and Yeshayahu prophesied. And in his prophecy, he said, "V'samtia lemorash kipod ve'agimei mayim v'tatoseo v'matate ashmei." Yom achada shamu aliyamsed be'Rebbe davis amrit lechaverta shkuli tate isa v'tati beisa. Take a tate isa, a broom, and start sweeping up the house. And we see clearly now that the meaning of the word tatase is a broom. And in this pasuk, God is being machabed. He's cleaning up Bavel. He's sweeping Bavel, mikol v'chol, sweeping them at the door, meaning it's going to be an empty country. Nothing is going to be left whatsoever at the destruction of Churban of Bavel. What does the pasuk mean in Tehillim? Hashlech al Hashem yavcha, v'hu yichal kelecha. Well, what does yavcha mean? Amar Rabba bar Chana, Yom Achare Yazmina Bahari Ahutaya. This is the first case that we have that's not the Yamsa of Rebbe, but Taya means a Socher Aravi, right? An Arab who's involved in buying and selling. Avadorena Tuna. I was carrying a very heavy burden on my shoulders. Amali, so that Arab said to me, Shkol Yahavich, take your burden, Ushti Agam Loy, and put it on my camel. But we see that the word Yahav means a masa. Let's go back to the pasuk in Tehillim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling David, Hashlech al Hashem es ol dagasech. Take all your peckle of worries and just put them on HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and you could be trustworthy. You could trust God that He will carry all your burdens. Why bother with the worries that boggle you down, drag you down, all you have to do is just chuck them, so to speak, onto HaKadosh Baruch. And this leads us to the Mishnah on the bottom of Daf Chavav Amid Beis. Now, just like we blow the shofar on Rosh Hashana, there are two other occasions in which we blow the shofar, but in those two occasions, we accompany the shofar blowing. One second. Wait. And two other occasions where we blow the shofar in the Beis HaMikdash. First, it's Yom Kippur of the Yovel year, the 10th of Tishrei, when we go into Yovel. The Torah says, "Vavarta shofar trua b'chodesh hashvi b'asar l'chodesh b'yom kippur tariru shofar b'chol haaretz." And on a fast day, if there's no rain or any other impending chas v'shalom doom, then we declare a fast, a public fast, and the Mishnah tells us in Tainis, "Tiku taku akonim taku." They would blow the shofar on a Tainis. Now, in addition to the shofar, when they blew the shofar in the Beis HaMikdash on these occasions of Yom Kippur of Yovel, or to declare a Tainus for Atziras Geshavim, then the shofar was accompanied by chatzotzos, which are otherwise known in English, I think, as trumpets. So the Mishnah later on is going to talk about these two things: the Tekiah in the Beis HaMikdash with shofars accompanied by chatzotzos, and also various categories of shofars that they would use to blow lechatchila to fulfill the mitzvah. So our Mishnah now is addressing Rosh Hashana and also the other occasions in which we blow the shofar, like we said, the shofar of Yom Kippur of Yovel, or in the Gzeira of a Tainus Tzibur, when the shofar was accompanied by chatzot. Shofar shel Rosh Hashana. Now we're talking about the Tekiyos in the Beis HaMikdash. Yael Poshut, like exactly the opposite of what we blow on Rosh Hashana outside the Beis HaMikdash. Outside the Beis HaMikdash, we blow a curved shofar, and the Gemara is going to derive this. But in the Beis HaMikdash on Rosh Hashana, we would blow a straight shofar, which is a shofar of a yael. Yael is some kind of a chayil, like a, I don't know if he translates it here as a gazelle, maybe. Well, you have the article, okay? Yeah. Can you tell me how he translates yael? I should know this because I have a granddaughter by that name. I think it's gazelle or deer. Ibex? Ibex is a wild deer, I think, in the mountains. Okay, but it seems that the shofar of this animal, of this ibex, is straight, is posh. And here's another unique feature about this shofar of Rosh Hashana in the Beis HaMikdash. It was piv mitzupe zav. I mean, that's not something we can accept in a shofar, but in the Beis HaMikdash, they would put a coating, a layer of gold on the outside of the mouth of the shofar. And in the Beis HaMikdash, the shofar of Yoel that was mitzpiv mitzupe zav was accompanied on two sides with chatzot, these trumpets that were made of silver. And they would blow from the two sides of the tokea of the shofar in the middle, one on the right and one on the left, and in the middle was the tokea of the shofar. Shofar marif, the chatzotzos mekatzos. the trumpets were blown with short blasts such that the shofar blast would last longer. Because as long as the chatzotzos and the shofars are being heard simultaneously, you can't discern the difference between the two kolos. That's called trei koli lo mishtamoy. So therefore, they would blow the shofar a little bit longer. And why is that? Mitzvah hayom b'shofar. The main mitzvah here is the shofar, not the chatzotzos. Now, the opposite is going to be in the case of tinios. Remember, we said that for a declaration of a fasting, when the rains are not coming down, they would blow the shofar, and the shofar was accompanied by chatzotzos, and all this took place in the Beis HaMikdash. Now, number one, B'Shel Zecharon. We'll soon see there were two shofars, and they had to come from Elin, from rams. Kfufin, a ram's horn, is curved. So it's the exact opposite of what we do on Rosh Hashana in the Beis HaMikdash, where we take a Yal Pasha. Pia Mitzupa Kesef, instead of putting on a layer of gold around the peh, they put a layer of silver. Shtei Chatzotzos Ba'emtza, and there were two shofars on the right and on the left. So in the formation, the chatzotzos are being blown in the middle, flanked on the right side and on the left side with shofar. And here, it's going to be just the opposite. Shofar mekatzer, they would blow a relatively short note from the shofar. V'chatzotzos marich. So it was very critical to hear the sound of the chatzotzos after the sound of the shofar terminated. And why is that? She'ikar mitzvos hayom v'chatzotzos. On a tainis, it's the chatzotzos that play the major role. And why is that? Because the purpose of blowing chatzotzos on a tainis is la sifat ha'am, is to gather the people together for tefillah and for tshuva, and these are done with chatzotzos. And that's based on a pasuk in Baalot that says, "Chatzotzos kesef v'hayu l'chol mikra ha'eda." So the main mitzvah here is the chatzotzos. We'll have to understand why we accompany the chatzotzos with the shofars. But what we have to know is that the main mitzvah is the chatzotzos. Then the Mishnah continues, Shava, the din of Yom Kippur, of Yovel, le Rosh Hashana, has the same din as Rosh Hashana l'Tkiya, meaning that in both cases, according to this Tanakama, even with regard to Rosh Hashana, we should use a shofar pashut, a straight shofar, not a curved one. Ule brachos, which means that when they recited the 9 brachos of Tfilas Musa, and in addition to the 3 brachos Rishonos and the 3 brachos Achronos, they had 3 brachos which are called Malchios, Achronos, and Shofros. So all told, there were 9 brachos in the Musaf Shmon Esrei of Rosh Hashanah. And the din of Yovel is identical with the din of Rosh Hashanah. So therefore, according to this Tanakama, they would blow on Rosh Hashanah and Yovel shofar pashut, whereas on Tinios, kaf. However, we pass like Rabbi Yehuda in this case. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees on Rosh Hashanah token b'shel scharim, meaning we use the elim, and that means we use the shofar kaf. Will be Yovelos b'shel ye'elim. I mean, here he's willing to agree that on Yovel they would blow a shofar pashut. But to say that the Yovel is equal to Rosh Hashanah for all its dinim, that's not so according to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Levi, mitzvah shel Rosh Hashanah shel Yom Kippurim b'kfufim. The mitzvah is that you should blow on Rosh Hashanah and on Yom Kippur a curved shofar. That's called a kafuf, like the shofar of a ram of an island. But Vishel Kol Hashana, which is a reference to the tainis, is b'pshuta. And this is exactly the opposite of what we learned in our Mishnah. Well, we could justify one part of Rabbi Levi when he says that shall Rosh Hashanah b'kfufim, because that could be in agreement with Rabbi Yehuda. But everybody agrees that the shofar of Yom Kippurim has to be b'shal Yael, which means the shofar pashut. And with regard to the shofar of Hainis, which Rabbi Levi identifies as the shofar pashut, that's also against that Mishnah, because that Mishnah says ubetinios Shells b'shells charin, which means Elin, which means kafir. I mean, everything is messed up. I mean, Rabbi Levi is just against that Mishnah. So the Gemara immediately raises this objection. Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah here in the Masechet Rosh Hashana, shofar shel Rosh Hashana shel Yoel Pashu. How could Rabbi Levi hold kafir? So that's not a question. The Gemara answers, Hudi Amriki Aitana, he holds like Rabbi Yehuda. And Rabbi Yehuda holds that a Rosh Hashanah, which is Charim, which means it was kafir. Besides, we learned in the Brisa, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, not sure why the Gemara feels that they have to be compelled to quote the Brisa. He says in the footnote, L'chora haya l'gemara lahamid is divrei Rabbi Levi ki Rabbi Yehuda b'mishnah seinu, v'lo lochiach came Brisa. So he has a long explanation here from the Pnei Yeshua. Anyway, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rosh Hashanah you talking b'shal Scharim, that means Elim that were kfufim, who be ovlos b'shal Elim that were pshutim. So Gemara says, V'lei mehilchasuk Rabbi Yehuda. Why did Rabbi Levi say it as his original position? He's just simply accepting the position of Rabbi Yehuda, who came way before him. So Gemara says, Yavi Amri Hilchasok Rabbi Yehuda, that he said that we passed like Rabbi Yehuda, but I would have misunderstood. And I feel shall Yovel Nabi Rabbi Yehuda spirit. Rabbi Yehuda went a step further. Rabbi Yehuda said that the Yovlos B'Shel Ye'elim, which means pshutim. And we would think that he passes like Rabbi Yehuda, even with regard to the shofar of Yovel, which means that it should be pashut and different than the shofar of Rosh Hashanah. Therefore, Rabbi Levi says that's not so. On Rosh Hashanah, I pass like Rabbi Yehuda the Tkiyah is bekafuf, but on Yom Kippur of Yovel, I pass that the shofar should be kafuf. In other words, Rabbi Levi accepted an exact, complete, total equation between Yovel and Rosh Hashanah. And therefore, just like on Rosh Hashanah, we need a kafuf, so too on Yovel, we need a kafuf. What's the machlokes between Tanakam Rabbi Yehuda, Mar, Sabak Rabbi Yehuda, Rosh Hashanah, Kama dechayev inish daite tvei mili. A person should have a mental state, a mood of kafuf, like, so to speak, bending his head down. B'Yom Kippur, there the Tkiyah is not coming for, the Tzuma Shel Yom of Kippur, of Hapara and Bakasha, but rather it's the mitzvah of Yovel. We're just announcing the cherus, the freedom of Yovel, that, the slaves can raise their heads up. It's coming to Poshet in his Tfei, Daiti Tfei Mailim. And when it's derech cherus, then a person's das is straight ahead, so to speak. He doesn't have to feel any sort of sense of kafir. Rosh Hashanah, kama de poshet in his type. Better than a person should be miyasher himself. His posture appropriate, it should be straight. He wants to show on Rosh Hashanah that he's a straight guy. He doesn't have any faults, any curves, and so forth and so on. So therefore, we want to blow on a straight shofar. And Yom Kippur and Yovel is exactly equivalent to Rosh Hashanah, and therefore we should be tokea b'shofar yosha. But the tiny is coming to kai finish tight to say, if the rains are not coming down, chas v'sholem, then a person should be kafur, and he should be bent down as a posture that reflects the mood of solemnity and humility, and we're coming to God with supplication. And Rabbi Levi Paskins like Rabbi Yehuda, that when it comes to tefillah, a person should be kafuf, therefore the shofar Hashana should be kafuf. He holds like the Rabbanan the Yom Kippurim Chel Yovel, we should derive from Rosh Hashana in Gzeir Shava, therefore he requires that even the shofar of the Yovel should be kafuf. On Tainios, he accepted the hurrah that we should blow a shofar pashut, and that's going to be a heker that the tkiyos are not the oros. This leads us to Daf Chav Zayin Amud Aleph, correct? And the Mirza Hashem, we will learn that tomorrow, and then Chav Ches, which is Shabbos, we'll try to tape it and put it on the YU Torah site, on YouTube. Okay, then, so have a great day. Thank you so much.